Here we are between two sprints. Boom. Look at that with our guest of honor today, Justin Smith. New view for us. I like this one.
There you go.
But I've had the pleasure of shaking Justin's hand multiple times. He comes out to all of our events and he's a hard man to track down. I don't know if he's in the Bahamas or Wyoming or Montana or Georgia or Texas or everywhere in between. But he spent some time in the college side at Tulane football and now is has his own kind of NFL private kind of training group that you can get into. But I've super enjoyed our chats online, offline, and everything in between with our fearless co-host Adam Rolfe, aka Speed Farm. So thank you for joining. Tell everyone how you're doing today, and let's get into it.
I'm doing great. Currently in Montana, so that's where me and my family have our permanent residence. We trained this year in Georgia at Georgia State in Atlanta, and then we went out to the Bahamas this summer. But yeah, I'm fired up to be here. Thank y'all for having me.
Fantastic. And I totally misspoke. It was Oregon, not Wyoming. But I know it's Montana, Oregon,
Yeah.
Georgia, for sure, for
There you
sure.
go. Yeah,
So let's start about kind of your journey with 1080 and then kind of the development of this kind of little NFL group that you got going on.
for sure. So I started using the Sprint to fall of 2024 is when I got my hands on it, and it was cool for me because it was there. So one of the main guys that I work with, the NFL guys, he went in season, and then I literally got the Sprint like maybe a week later. So I got to play around with it a ton just personally before I implement it into their training in the spring. But I've been using it for 2 complete off seasons. So we have a spring off season that's anywhere between depending on OTAs and things, like it could be up to like 14 weeks. And then we'll have a summer off season that's usually 4 or 5 weeks long after those OTAs. So I've had 2 years of using it completely. I've only upped the amount that I have continued to use it, especially this year was more weight room stuff, I would say, than I used it for last year, when last year was more just, field specific training. But I have loved it for sure.
Those eccentric overload bicep curls.
That was the main thing. Yeah, that
The main thing for
got me
sure.
fired.
For sure.
Yeah. No, it's
So
funny when I some of the end of our workouts, like towards the end of the week, I'll have the guys choose their own hypertrophy, call it like protection bodybuilding exercise. And the 1080 got involved way more than I thought. After we did our isokinetic work with, their, important stuff. Not that bicep curls aren't important, but I was like, you guys are just getting we did trap work, we did curls, all the things.
love it, love it. So you're rocking and rolling with Darnell, his
Mhm.
buddy Dylan, and then
Yep.
I know that one or two guys kind of rotate in the mix. But I'd love to kind of compare and contrast, kind of like we talked about offline a few days ago, kind of off season / year one, or the
Yeah.
main things you were interested in, kind of diving into. Your IG is super good from the isokinetics to the lateral stuff to the assisted to the resisted, and you are
Mhm.
definitely maximizing what you're doing with it.
Yeah.
So if you could kind of give our audience a little bit of overview of kind of where you started, and then we
Yeah.
could talk about what you added, subtracted, kind of dialed in, as well as the interesting piece of what do the guys gravitate towards as well. So kind of
Yeah.
year one, year two.
Yeah. I would say year one was pretty linear in nature. We didn't do a ton of change of direction, a ton of eccentric overload. Whether that was just them getting used to the machine and the feel of it all, effort was the big thing, and gathering information from them, getting numbers where I could start working into velocity decrements instead of just throwing out certain, resistances that would be progressive in nature. It was like, all right, now where are you truly at? So it was a lot of short burst acceleration type stuff. We got into some heavy things. I even put the previous summer, so 2024, we did a lot of sled work. And then I even a prowler type stuff, and we would implement the prowler with the 1080 attached. So it was we're taking exercise that we've already done and the athletes are familiar with and enjoy, and then adding, whether it's just data to it, or whether it's adding resistance and then transitioning to full 1080. So I would say year one, we did limited assisted work. It's just dependent on the athletes. Some of my athletes that I work with, even high school track kids, they love it. And it's man, I'm loving the feel of this. It's fun. They're ready to just go full bore right off the bat. And then some of the NFL guys, it's like, no, this is a new response. I haven't done this. I haven't felt this kind of stimulus. And so it was really like easing into it. And more like drill work, dribbles, just getting used to like the feel. And then I would say this spring, but then even this summer was, they're more comfortable with it than ever, and they're going full go. And I would say change of direction wise, we did a lot more change of direction with the 1080 this year. I implemented a lot of the stuff that I learned in Texas, talking about like the inside leg push. So we would do like crossover steps. We do crossover steps up hills. We would do like decelerations, and then I would even use the change of direction work for I would say the most important part of our summer training is when we have a quarterback out there, and they're actually out there running routes, doing their thing. And I would use the 1080 to prep them, whether it's like a quick release with a 3-step burst or some decelerations, just to start getting them used to like that load that they're going to feel going into their cuts. Versus year one was mainly kind of just like, all right, we're linear. We're going to get it to some top end work. They're super comfortable on the acceleration side after we do like our foot prep and everything. But it just got a little bit more, I guess, complex, but at the same time, it had to make sense for what we're doing that day. And then the weight room, last year I did a bit in the weight room. It was mainly specific to like some weaknesses that the guys had, whether it was hips or hamstrings, or whether there was like an imbalance on one side. This year, we did isokinetics at least twice a week. 3 times, I guess if you call the bicep curls part of that. But like, we would do, from acceleration type focus, hip knee drives. We did bilateral hamstring curl against a roller, AD abduction, and then even some like rotational core stuff. Because I would do core work with them almost every day, whether it's like extension, flexion, or like rotational focused. And the 1080 just brings intent. And then the weight room, especially with the isokinetic, when you can set that speed limit, the intent goes through the roof. And reps would be super low, but I would say this summer is the most we've ever used that machine in the weight room. And I just used the rack mount to attach it, and so.
Nice. Hey, I'm gonna jump in. On the isokinetics, give people a feel for like when you did that twice a week, what are kind of the sets, reps, just parameters that you're looking
at? No more than 2 sets, and then within a set, no more than 3 reps. I think the last week, so we kind of had a deload week, we would just do like 1 set of 3. And if you're going full go and you get to your 3rd rep, like in my experience, you want to be done. And if the numbers aren't already starting to tail off, which I would say set 1 versus set 2, they tend to increase just because you're like potentiated, you're used to the feel. So sometimes I think that 2nd set is the most valuable. But beyond that, I would say like that's, so 6 reps total per exercise. And I would separate it whether, so if we usually do our top end work on the field on Mondays. And then if we had more of an acceleration, power-based day, that's when I would do, I don't know what you would call these, I just call them like acceleration drives, where you'd be at an angle, you would be long in the hip, super extended, you're driving the knee through. That would be like more of an acceleration day. And then our abduction would be on the back end of like a change of direction day. And I would usually save the hamstring curls until the end of the week. Just if there's one movement that I would say, like from a posterior chain perspective, that guys can cramp easy on, and like after the week, I'm okay with that. I would put those at the end of the week, or at the tail end of like a top end or a velocity day.
On your acceleration days, when you were doing like the long hip and driving the leg forward, was that a power exercise or was that isokinetic? So you were doing like explosive exercises early, and then at the end of the day, you were following up with like, was it isokinetic?
Yes. So we'd have like a power day on the field. And then I would come in, and that would be one of the very first things we do, isokinetic in the weight room. Okay. And you could almost look at it like the guys we would go be on the field for an hour and a half to 2 hours every day. And then we would drive, like this past summer, we were in the Bahamas, and we would train for an hour and a half to 2 hours. We would get in the car. I would give them their peanut butter jelly sandwiches. They would crush up a protein shake, and they would have this lull and this intensity. And then we get to the weight room, I'm getting the workout up on the board, the guys are kind of chilling, and then it's like, all right, like let's ramp it back up. Like we can't, this is still an important part of our day. And the isokinetic would almost set the tone for that, because there's no lollygagging on that. It's like, if you're not, I can see the numbers. So I've seen a max effort rep from you before. If that's not anywhere we're close, then like, how are you feeling? And then that's when like I could ask them 1 to 10, like how ready to train are you or whatever. You got my subjective assessments you can do, but I would say like that was kind of how we started things. And then versus like the ABA deduction, we would also do those at the beginning, and they would be paired with 2 other exercises, more of I usually do like every lift is usually 2 sets of some sort of activation, potentiation type movement. And those would all be considered like in there. And then the only thing I would really do at the end of the day, so this is after prep work at the house, field work, and the lift. The only thing I would say to the very end of that would be the bilateral hamstring curl with the roller. So hips up, bringing the heels in as hard as you can towards the hips. I would say that till the end.
Making kinetic force is no joke, and it's definitely a skill that like needs to be developed over time. But I 100% believe that if you can actually make force for 6 reps, that is more than enough. And although complexity, maybe as you were kind of talking through it, or maybe if you listed out all those exercises, maybe that might seem complex, but it's like things you would be doing anyways. It's just a more specific way to load or potentiate or get a little bit more kind of out of the athlete. And it all aligns with the theme of the day and the training that you're kind of doing. So now, so as he referenced the Bahamas, it was your home for 4 or 5 weeks. This training group just crushing it every day. Sounds super, super cool. The sprint, you flew with it. You had the rack mount, you were crushing it. Could you take us through how you fit the sprint in on kind of each day? Because it's super interesting to say like, hey, we can do anything from overspeed sprints to super specific COD work to we can take it in the weight room and kind of rip isokinetics. So what was like a week of training, both with the sprint and not, but what does a week of NFL offseason training look like?
Yeah, no, I love it. And we had an awesome time. And it was like, it's a special time of the year for me and the guys, because like literally this is the last block before they go into preseason and camp starts. And it's just like college, where like fall camp is going to be a grind, even at the professional level. So they want a blend of highly valuable, intense, meaningful training. But then, again, what I try to do in the summer off season, especially, is like we're also in the Bahamas, and there also needs to be a sense of like we're going to train hard, and that's always going to be the priority. But at the same time, we're going to be here, we're going to do fun things, and I want you to feel good, not beaten down at the end of this. So we've got to train hard enough to get a meaningful, stimulus to respond to. But if I just like ramp you up all 4 weeks and then send you into camp, like, from a nervous system perspective or whatever, like what am I actually doing? So I feel like we had to balance things out. So a week of training would be Monday through Friday. Saturday, Sunday, totally off, except for we do some adventures. We go like spearfishing, snorkeling. And I would have to take that into account, because like even kicking around with fins is like pretty taxing on the hamstring. So I'll take it all into account. But like a week would be, so we'd go Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday would be our training days. Our Wednesday would be our recovery day. So like Monday, if there's no quarterback there, our Monday would be more of a top end focused velocity day on the field. Well, I'm gonna start here. I'm just gonna take the whole day. In the beginning, we would wake up early. Every morning was like a 6 a.m. wake up, and that was like time for guys and myself to read their Bibles, write in their journal, whatever they want to start their day. And we happened to like be on the beach, so we would like walk out to the beach, do that. After that, we would do prep work. So Darnell's fascia lady, her name's Renee. She's awesome, love her to death, super smart, knows the body. She was there with me. So we had 2 guys there, Dylan and Darnell. So one would start with her, one would start with me. So one would get fascia work for about 45 minutes. The other would have me doing like prep work for 45 minutes. And prep work with me is anything from like diaphragmatic breathing to some neurological stuff on the foot, to manual stretching, to mobility, to like specific activation for like Dylan. He has a specific hamstring routine that he does before every single practice. And like during those 5 to 10 minutes, like he would do that almost every single day, especially before top end day. And then we would do vision work. And our vision work would include anything from like if we're actually out there like catching footballs that day, then it's a lot of tracking, it's a lot of peripheral work, like things like that. So after we did our 45 minutes, we would switch. I would do my work with the other guy. We'd go eat breakfast. We hop in the car and we head to the field. Monday would be more of a top end day, velocity day. So with the 1080, we would do. I'm careful to do like a ton of assisted work this close to preseason. So we would start off with like dribbles, but then we would do anything between like 10 and 30 yard, like a fly, where they have the freedom to open up. I've got their training velocities, and we're looking to get exposure towards those, but it's not necessarily like, I'm not trying to get, like we talked about yesterday, like in that 103%, like over speed. Like we're more like creating shapes that we're going to then like use throughout the rest of the training. Top end day, we would be on the track. 2 out of the 4 weeks we're actually on the track. We do wickets, we do contrast stuff. We do drilling, we would do prime times, like uphills, like things like that. So we're getting a little bit more specific posterior focused work in the beginning of the week. And then we would head into our lift. So our lift, the way I would have it separated out is like, depending on where we were on route day, I would either go like upper focused or lower focused, depending on where that day was. But let's say it's like a lower focused day, it would be more of a power type day. So reps are pretty limited. We're more so like focused on like dynamic power in the weight room. And the 1080 stuff, like if that was our power day, that's when we do like the hip drives and things like that. If it was an upper focus day, I would still separate it into more of a dynamic day, versus the tail end of the week is going to be more strength on both sides. So whether Monday, Tuesday is like upper or lower, depending on when the quarterback was showing up, I would kind of like, vary things around to make sure that's the focus of the session or the day. And then in the weight room, it'd be upper, lower. Wednesday would be a mobility or like recovery day. That's where we would wake up a little bit later. They'd still do their journals, still read their Bible, whatever they got for their morning routine. And then mainly we'd hop in the pool, and then I would do pool work with them. We'd actually start off on like a yoga mat, doing like breathing, a bit of mobility. I do a lot of Tim Anderson's like original strength, called pressing reset. It's like a 10-minute, start with a 10-minute, but you can go as long as you want. Crawling, rolling, kind of like floating type movements, head nods, things like that, just to kind of like reset the body. And then we'd go into the pool, and pool would be anything from like isolated movements at the hip, hamstring, or big range of movements with the upper body, to treading water. One of my guys, he wanted to do like breath hold training because I took him spearfishing and he loved it and he wanted to get better at it. So we do that on the tail end, and then it would just kind of be like a free swim. And then after that, we would do breath work with a lady. Her name's Shannon Watson. She's in South Carolina. She works with the Gamecocks there and some professional athletes. And she would basically take them into like a down regulation session. So it's like, the intensity between Monday and Tuesday would just continue to ramp up. Wednesday, we're trying to maximize recovery, so that includes the nervous system being able to be in a recovery state. So she would take them through, and me, I would jump into like a 30 to 45 minute session. And most of the time at the end of the session, we're all asleep. Like everyone's like literally asleep on a yoga mat. And then Thursday, let's say that's our, let's say we've done our velocity day on Monday. The guys have worked with the quarterback on Tuesday, so they got their change of direction, deceleration. Then on Thursday would be either, or if not a quarterback, then we'd go into change of direction session on Thursday. If they did work with a quarterback those are the 2 days, then this would be more of an acceleration focused. Like, all right, I need effort. We're going to get our power work in. We're going to work like 40 to 50% velocity decrement. Those 20-yard marches that you guys showed me in Austin. We did that versus like sustained high intensity for 20-yard bouts. We would use a hill those days. Everything's like horizontal projection. And then in the weight room, that's usually Thursday. I usually want Thursday to be our last lower body focused lift. And And that's when we do the majority of our isokinetics in the weight room, just to like get that, prep potentiation back up for like our one last big session in the weight room. And then Friday was hopefully, and like I said, it depends on the QB that's there, but usually like an upper focused workout where we're really doing some true strength work, and then we're just finishing with a beach body workout, just because both of these guys love it. They want to feel jacked, they want to feel pumped up at the end of the week. And we usually did that outside in the sun if we could, if we weren't just tired of the heat by then. And then Saturday, Sunday was a true off day. Sometimes I'll call it the wild edge option. So like I would have an adventure planned. If they wanted to be involved, they could jump in, snorkeling, going to the beach, spearfishing, going on kayaks. We took a boat out one day. And then Sunday was a true free day. I don't have anything planned, do whatever you want. And yeah, so I hope I feel like I just talked a million miles an hour, but that's kind of the overview of what a week would look like.
Justin, if you can talk for just a minute about the difference in training a high school athlete or a middle school athlete, that long-term athletic development process using assisted sprinting, compared to what you said about the guys that are pro guys that like they're older, they know their bodies much better. They're a little bit more sensitive to assisted sprinting, specifically in that domain. Just kind of like give some feedback of like what works well with that high school population, why you can dive into that quickly earlier in sessions, and like earlier in experience with your trust relationship compared to some of the pros. I think that'd be you have such a unique insight into that.
Yeah. So with assisted sprinting, what I would say is like your training age matters a lot with the exposure and the amount of exposure you have to that type of. I think it's extremely valuable. I even mess around with it with like accelerations, but I would say when you have an athlete, let's say you got a 28-year-old NFL, high level, very fast, very like twitchy athlete, and you introduce a new stimulus to that athlete, they are going to be just naturally more hesitant to involve or to like make that a part of their training, and to trust that and trust that it could possibly take them to even like another % faster, or take them from where they're already in the elite level and bring them up. Like that might be the key for them, versus a high school athlete. I think they've got such a long way to go in their overall development, both physically and even like from a nervous system perspective. Like the earlier you can introduce that, and it has to make sense. I think you have to coach it well. I think you have to be like, no, this is the feeling, this is the foot strike, this is what you don't need to feel. If we are feeling those braking forces or whatever, like we've got to back off. But I think if you can introduce that, the confidence that the athlete will have in doing it, and overall like what you can get out of it from a shapes perspective or however you're training it, it could be extremely valuable. And I think too, with a high school athlete, like one of my track girls she's going to college next year, like you have to make it fun, and it has to be a low stress environment. And it's hard to create a low stress environment to an athlete of a certain training age if it's a brand new thing, without like over coaching it. So I would say with a high school athlete, like introducing it into the warm up, and then after a few weeks into the warm up, all right, we're going to do some builds. All right, we're going to do some flies, and like, all right, you feeling good with this? Okay, let's see what you got today. Like you've got 20 yards to make this happen or whatever. I think it's a really valuable tool.
And then could you share a little bit more? So that was kind of like implementing with that kind of 15, 18 plus kind of age range. Actually, one of your guys kind of requested it, if I'm not mistaken, or he asked you a little bit more. So then take us through. So it's kind of like on the extreme of one end is like, we got to use it a lot. We got to teach. It's going to help them out. Yeah. And then we have like, hey, this is a super niche specific stimulus. And then you have in the middle where it's like a super high level athlete, but they also kind of want it. So if you could explain more, it was Dylan, correct? If I'm not mistaken, if you could take us through that. Yeah,
no, I always ask the guys after, I ask them all along, but especially after like the spring, and then they go into OTAs. And I'll communicate with their strength staff about the things that they see and they want to work on. But then I always ask the athlete, like, what's something that you if you could tell me one thing that you want to be a part of this program, what would it be? And they mulled it over, and Dylan was like, man, assisted work. Like, I want to do more of that. And I think for him, he is more of a acceleration, like power-based athlete. Like off the line, he's going to be fast. He's very strong. His feet are super strong. So there's no give when his foot hits the ground. But I would say where he started to separate himself. So like I started training him in the spring of 2025. He hit his top speed that he ever hit in OTAs that following, it was probably like April or May, probably May. It was like 21.5 or something like that. And he's like, I was like, okay. He's like, dude, I've never hit that before. And then this past OTAs, he hit like 22.08. And it's like for him, getting into that range right there is something that's going to separate him and make something that's not necessarily maybe in his wheelhouse or something that he's used to being like, no, this is a part of my athletic profile. Like I'm not just off the line, 10 to 15 yards type of separator. Like I can get you in space. And then also like, I can hit 22. Like that's different. So I would say for him, like I think that I don't want to speak for him, but I would say like, maybe there's a light bulb moment there. Like this is one thing that and I think too, like coaching him, it was like I've had to teach him to relax and to be just like super easy about it. And then once you are confident with it, with the assisted work and getting into those velocities that are at the upper range and then past the upper range for the athlete, I think he saw that and was like, all right, this is making sense, and which is cool because I always have to have an answer for what we're doing, and I want them to believe in their training 100%. So there's absolutely no question. And I love when an athlete tells me this is a difference maker for me. I want it as a part of the program because then it's just a no-brainer. Like it's going to be in there and we're going to progress it.
Super, super cool and high level. And, to be with these guys this long and check every box, but do it intentionally where one day doesn't detract from the next, I think makes total sense. But then also how one motor can kind of fit into kind of all of those different things creatively. But two follow-up questions, not 1080 related. Would you say you're a better golfer or spear fisherman?
Oh, spear fisherman for sure.
For sure.
Yeah, no doubt. Golf is so fun. But I would say, yeah, I got a lot of work to do on the course. I need some lessons. That's what needs to happen.
And then how do you find somewhere in the Bahamas that has a nice spot, a pool, a track, a field, a weight room? And like, I feel like this is the perfect spot.
Yeah, I had to do a site visit before we went. So like I took myself to the Bahamas.
Oh, sorry, honey, I have to go to the Bahamas for a weekend.
Yeah, right.
It's for like work.
Pretty tough. But exactly. But I did. I went down there. I rented a car. I drove all over that island. So we were in Nassau. And I knew, the only person I knew in the Bahamas, like halfway knew, his name's Jimmy Mackey. He owns a gym called MacFit 360. I heard him speak at a Sorinex conference a couple of years ago. And I reached out to him and I was like, hey man, this is where the guys want to go. This is kind of our plan. I need to find a place to train. And then I also need to find like access to fields. And he's like, all right. So I went down there and I met with him. He literally drove me all over the island, introduced me to a ton of people, shook a bunch of hands. And then once he dropped me off, then at that point, I needed to find the field that we were going to train at. And like logistically, in the beginning, I would say like that's the kind of stuff I worry about because like in the States, if I can, it's more tangible. Like it's just, we were at Oregon the last summer and we were in Montana the year before. Those spots, I can just, go into a high school, see if it works out, see if I can help the high school in any way, like run a training camp or rent the space or whatever versus the Bahamas. Like, and it's a different mentality down there. They live way slower than we do. They are not in a rush to do anything. So it's like, if I'm down there and I'm like, hey, I need, these dates lined up. It's like, yeah, we can chat about it, the day up or whatever. It's like, so that's kind of how you have to be okay logistically with kind of going on the fly and being okay with if it doesn't go as planned. But it worked out so well. We ended up working out. We trained anywhere from on the beach, like we did a conditioning, like a capacity day on the beach. It was week one. In week one, the guys, I think, just kind of wanted to ease into things a bit more. So our change of direction day, I turned it into a COD, like capacity day. And we did our vision workout there and they came up with some drills and I had the football out there and then we ended up training on this rugby field with a quarterback. His name's Nate Peterman, who he's an agent now, but he played in the NFL for 8 years. He came out there, and it all just worked out in a way where I'm like, man, you can make this happen. You just got to be willing to kind of do some things on the fly, and some things aren't going to work out. But as far as our experience in the Bahamas, it could not have been better. I'm super thankful to Jimmy and his staff for having us because they have an amazing space. Like if you ever go to Nassau, you have to go there and train at his space because it's like next level.
Electric, super, super cool. And last thing is we'll wrap up here. So interesting kind of journey and evolution, not only as you've kind of dialed in your training, but also how the sprint kind of supports that. What are some of the things that you are excited about diving into even more, whether it's with some of your kind of other athletes, or if you already have some kind of a notes app on your phone of things to mess around with next off season with these guys?
Yeah. I would say one of the things that I feel like we dabbled with this off season, especially the summer, was prep work for like a true route running day. So in my opinion, the most important day of their week is when they go out there and I warm them up and then they do their thing. We did a bit of prep work with them. So like we do like we talked about a little bit, Matt, like a release. Like I would put it on a certain, kg for that day. They would choose the release that they wanted to do. Like they were coming off, the line of scrimmage, and then it'd be like a 3-step burst. And we did a bit of that. And for the most part, I would say, man, like the professional athletes, when it's time for them to go, they do not want a super long warm up. So I would say, for the most part, a warm up that I would have written in my head, I usually cut that almost in half. It's like, hey, dude, like we're about to go. Like let's get through this so we can go. I would say what I'm excited about is creating more of a potentiation and more of a warm up for them with the 1080 that they're excited about and makes even more sense than what we did this past off season. Like we would do a bit of decel, some crossover steps, some hard repeat accelerations. And I think after a couple of weeks, they got more excited and more kind of like willing to use the machine versus instead of just going out and doing your regular dynamic warm up and then going straight into the deal. I think the 1080 has extreme value if you're like, no, this is going to take the effort and the intent that I would normally have in prep work and just like send it through the roof. And then I was a college baseball player and I used to swing that, heavy bat on deck. And then I got to where like, man, that was my deal. Like I loved the contrast of that and then how I felt right after. So I think I can get better at doing that and for it making more sense and for more athletes to be like, no, this is a valuable piece of equipment and it's going to take everything I'm doing and make it more efficient. I would say that's probably one example.
Absolutely electric. Really enjoyed this chat, like many of our other chats, but I want to roll out the gold carpet for you to shamelessly plug, emphasis on shameless. Where can people get more of Coach Justin Smith, Wild Edge Performance, and kind of everything in between?
Instagram, justin.j.smith. And it's pretty much all training stuff now. I'll put a little bit of stuff with my family, but for the most part, like I try to share what I do, what I believe in, what I'm doing with the athletes. If anyone can feel free, like they can reach me on email, jjsmith2427@gmail. If you have questions or like I'm an open book when it comes to training, or you want to know like what I do or how I did it, because that's how I learn. And I learned from guys like John Griffin at the Falcons. He's the same way. And like part of why I do what I do in the off season is because of what he tells me they're about to do in season, in preseason. And then wildedgeperformance.com. So I've got an online programming side of the business where I've got an app. So if guys like us, want to stay athletic and want to keep training at a high level, got like 8 programs on there now. So that's just kind of like a fun thing for me outside of the athletic side of things. But yeah.
Fantastic. So I want to say thank you very much again for your time, for being an awesome coach, putting your sprints to the test, and then kind of sharing it all with us. So I look forward to chatting next.
No doubt. Appreciate you guys.